Some 8,000 US soldiers from the elite 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions have been put on heightened alert in preparation for a possible deployment to Europe. The move comes in response to elevated fears of a potential Russian invasion of Ukraine.
At the direction of the President and following recommendations made by Secretary Austin, the United States has taken steps to heighten the readiness of its forces at home and abroad so that they are prepared to respond to a range of contingencies, including support to the NATO response force if it is activated.
Multinational NATO battle groups have been currently deployed to Poland, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. Now Germany, which is in charge of the forces deployed to Lithuania, is considering sending additional soldiers to the country.
I see great significance of German forces deployment. The mission of NATO's enhanced forward presence, led by Germany, is very successful. We have perfect political and military contacts with our German colleagues.
In an effort to reassure its easternmost member states and to conduct effective surveillance, NATO is weighing a further strengthening of its forces stationed in the Baltic states and Poland.
We are considering to further enhance our presence in the eastern part of the alliance. This could include the deployment of additional NATO battle groups. These deployments are proportionate and in line with our international commitments, and they reinforce European security for all of us.
Meanwhile, the Danish Air Force dispatched 4 F-16 fighter jets to Lithuania. The aircraft will double the strength of the Baltic air policing mission currently operated by Poland. NATO allies provided fighters to guide the airspace of Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia, as the Baltic states' air forces lack sufficient capability. Deployments of soldiers from NATO member states come in response to the month-long buildup of Russian troops around Ukraine. According to Ukrainian intelligence services, some 127,000 Russian servicemen are now amassed on the nation's borders. In an effort to strengthen the Ukrainian armed forces, the US, UK, Lithuania and Estonia provided them with additional arms. US President Joe Biden has stressed that in the event of Russian invasion of Ukraine, American forces will not be used to defend the country.
Russia has recently bolstered its forces on the border of Ukraine by over 127,000 troops, but the war started for the Ukrainians almost 8 years ago. Towns such as Mariupol suffered the brunt of the fights between the Ukrainian army and the Russian-backed rebels in the Donbas region.
Life is all right for now, thanks to our soldiers who have been protecting us. Yet we still live in constant fear. In 2014 and 2015, we did not leave our basements because fire was being exchanged non-stop. Our town is one of those which has suffered the most. People died here. There were shooting without break.
Ukrainians fear what might happen if another conflict will erupt.
If 2014 repeats itself, then it will be horrible. We just want to live and raise our children and not have to think about war.
Although a ceasefire between the two sides is reportedly being upheld, Ukrainian soldiers are constantly on the watch for incursions.
We are on the striking line of the Russian occupation zone. The front lines are located only 2 kilometers away from us.
Both sides are merely a breath away from each other on the front line.
2,000 meters, they are only 2 kilometers away.
Nevertheless, Ukraine's soldiers are determined to make sure that images such as those from Mariupol do not repeat themselves in the rest of the country.
I do not want the same thing to happen in the city, or worse. That is why I'm here.
Given the tense situation in eastern Ukraine, Western officials have warned that Russia may intend to create artificial provocations as a pretext for invasion.
Well, I can't go into the details of how we procure our intelligence. The reason we put that out into the public domain is we are going to call out every instance of Russia trying to influence democracy, trying to subvert Ukraine, false flag operations and sabotage, and we will call that out.
Since 2014, the inhabitants of Mariupol have been under the threat of occupation. Experts warn, however, that cities such as Kharkiv and Dnipro could also be targets during a Russian invasion.
As the situation around Ukraine continues to be tense, and it seems as though no breakthrough could be seen anywhere on the horizon, the US government is now asking China for help.
We are calling on Beijing to use its influence with Moscow to urge diplomacy. Because if there is a conflict in Ukraine, it is not going to be good for China either.
In recent times, China and Russia seem to tighten their diplomatic ties. The armies of the two countries were involved recently in common military maneuvers in the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea. Russian President Vladimir Putin will be among the few diplomats attending the opening ceremony of the 2022 Winter Olympic Games in Beijing. Meanwhile, relations between the US and China seem to be at the lowest they have ever been in recent history.
No longer they are following the policy of laying low, of appeasement, of not attracting attention. Xi Jinping's China is assertive China, trying to build its international prestige and recognition. So looking at those two administrations, there is very little hope for the de-escalation of those tensions in any foreseeable future.
The Chinese government is currently also involved in a dispute with the European Union.
Now the Lithuanian side, out of selfish calculation, attempts to hold China-EU relations hostage with its own mistakes. This is irresponsible and highly dangerous.
The tensions began after a de facto Taiwanese embassy was opened in Vilnius. Beijing responded by blocking Lithuanian imports to China. The EU accused Beijing of discriminatory trade practices.
The current crisis in and around Ukraine brought quite a lot of fear to the residents of neighboring countries. To put the Polish people at ease, President Andrzej Duda called a special National Security Council.
There has not been such a situation as we have now since 1989. It is indeed specific. At present, there is no significant direct military threat to Poland. At the moment, there are no signals that would indicate such an immediate threat. However, the situation of the so-called military security in our part of Europe is changing before our eyes.
The Polish head of state emphasized that the Council presented solutions to various scenarios and the discussions gave a clear view of the international situation surrounding Ukraine. Poland has been a staunch supporter of Ukraine's territorial integrity in the face of the Russian threat.